Okay, so this week we talked about the cardiovascular system. We first wanted to start off with the three main blood vessels of the system. The first being your arteries, which carry the heart or the blood away from the heart. The arteries are thick and elastic and they deal in high pressure. The veins are thinner than the arteries and deal in lower pressure, and they carry the blood towards the heart. And then your capillaries connect your veins and arteries, and they deal in the gas exchange, such as carbon dioxide and oxygen. Then we wanted to talk about the pulmonary and systemic circuit. The pulmonary circuit is when that oxygen poor blood is sent to the lungs for gas exchange to get rid of that carbon dioxide and pick up the oxygen. The systemic circuit is when that oxygen-rich blood is sent throughout the body to distribute the oxygen and nutrients. And then we made our little picture this week. So here is my heart. I lost my pointer. Okay. So when we're talking about oxygen poor blood coming into the heart, it comes in through the superior and inferior vena capas into the right atrium. It'll then travel through that tricuspid valve to the right ventricle, up the pulmonary valve to the pulmonary artery, where it'll then go to the lungs. And then once it picks up the oxygen from the lungs, it comes back in through the pulmonary veins to the left atrium. It'll go through that mitral valve to the aortic or left ventricle. And then in the left ventricle, it'll travel through the aortic valve through the aorta, which then will send it to the arteries and eventually throughout the body to share the oxygen and nutrients with the rest of the cells in our body. Oops. And then we wanted to talk about the different, or what causes the sounds of our heartbeat, and that is the vibration of the valves opening and closing. So when we're talking about systole, we're talking about the mitral and tricuspid valves closing, and that makes that lub sound that we hear. And we're talking about diastole, then we're talking about the aortic and pulmonary valves, and that makes the dub sound that we hear when you're recording your blood pressure. And then we wanted to talk about EKGs. EKGs are the measurement of your heart's electrical activity. It's usually written down as tracings on EKG grid paper. The grids can be broken up as measurements to tell how long or the amplitude of the electrical activity. You can mark various points of interest on the EKGs, such as the P waves, the T waves, the QRS complex, and then you can break those down into segments to show a particular activity of the heart. The EKGs can show different abnormalities of the heart, such as murmurs or SVT, tachycardia. You can see if you're an AFib. It can really just break down your heart and what might be going wrong there, so you can be diagnosed and treated accordingly. And then finally, we kind of touched on it already, but we want to jump back to the diastole and systole in regards to blood pressure. So when you are in systole or doing systole, then that is when those mitral and tricuspid valves are closing, and that is recorded as the systolic number on top, which causes a lot of pressure in your arteries. So by measuring that pressure on the artery walls, it's going to be much higher during systolic, so that top number is going to be higher. Distal is when the aortic and pulmonary valves are closing. It is a lower number because the heart is actually relaxing at that point. And again, that pressure is going to be lower, so it's a lower number, and it's recorded as a diastolic number on the bottom of your blood pressure. And so by recording the pressure of the artery is how we get the different blood pressure measurements. And that is just a couple of things we touched on this week with the cardiovascular system.